The political pressure has reached a breaking point. Prime Minister Keir Starmer finds himself in the eye of a national security storm that threatens to expose the very heart of British intelligence operations. After weeks of mounting accusations and parliamentary fury, Starmer has been forced into a corner, making a dramatic commitment that could reshape how we understand the collapsed China spy trial that has rocked Westminster to its core. The story begins with two men whose lives have been turned upside down by allegations that strike at the very foundation of national security. Christopher Cash, a 30-year-old former parliamentary researcher, and Christopher Berry, a 33-year-old teacher, found themselves at the center of what prosecutors called one of the most serious espionage cases in recent British history. Both men have vehemently denied any wrongdoing, but the charges against them painted a picture of systematic intelligence gathering that allegedly spanned from December 2021 to February 2023. Cash wasn't just any parliamentary researcher. He was deeply embedded in the Conservative establishment, working closely with senior Tories, including Tom Tugendhat, who now serves as Security Minister, and Alicia Kearns, the chairwoman of the Commons Foreign Affairs Committee. Most significantly, Cash served as director of the China Research Group, an organization that maintained a deeply skeptical view of Britain's relationship with Beijing. The irony is staggering. A man who worked for an organization critical of China was allegedly passing secrets to Chinese intelligence. The allegations were extraordinary in their scope and detail. According to the prosecution's case, Cash and Berry had become friends as early as August 2017, when both were teaching in the Hangzhou area of China. This friendship, prosecutors alleged, became the foundation for a sophisticated intelligence operation that would eventually reach into the highest levels of British government and democracy itself.
Let me set out the facts. The relevant period was when these offences took place. That was under the Conservative government between the years of 2021 and 2023. This period was bookended by the integrated review of 2021, the beginning of the period, and the refresh of that review in 2023, setting out their policy. These statements of government policy were very carefully worded to not describe China as an enemy. Instead,
Mr. Stewart, somebody who is on the Speaker's panel, I've told once before, should know better. Do not question my judgment. I thought it was important that the Prime Minister tells this House first rather than somewhere else. So please, this is very important to me and very important to the House. I take it seriously, so I don't need any more side comments. Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The review of 21 and the refresh of 23 were very carefully worded to not describe China as an enemy. Instead, they stated increased national security protections where China poses a threat, and that the then government would engage with China to leave room open for constructive and predictable relations.
The Crown Prosecution Service claimed that Berry was commissioned to produce at least 34 reports for a Chinese intelligence agent, with much of the information coming from Cash following specific requests for reports on particular topics. The information allegedly passed was not trivial political gossip. According to Deputy National Security Advisor Matt Collins, whose witness statements have now become central to this entire controversy, the intelligence included sensitive details about the inner workings of the British political system and the government's position on Chinese businesses. Even more damaging, the alleged intelligence reportedly included information about the personal and political activities of members of Parliament, including details about Jeremy Hunt being likely to pull out of the Conservative Party leadership race and Tom Tugendhat being almost certain to receive a cabinet position from then Prime Minister Rishi Sunak in exchange for support on foreign policy matters. Perhaps most chilling was an alleged message from Cash to Berry that read, "You're in spy territory now," sent after Cash was made aware in detail of a July 2022 meeting. This single message encapsulates the gravity of what prosecutors believed was happening, a systematic breach of national security that reached into the heart of British democracy. But then in September, everything collapsed. The trial that was supposed to begin in October was suddenly abandoned when prosecutor Tom Little told the Old Bailey that the Crown Prosecution Service would offer no evidence against the pair. The men walked free, but the questions that emerged would prove far more damaging to the government than any trial could have been. The reason for the collapse, according to Director of Public Prosecutions Stephen Parkinson, was devastating in its implications. In a rare public intervention that sent shockwaves through Westminster, Parkinson revealed that the government had failed to provide the information needed to successfully prosecute the alleged spies. The evidential standard, he explained, was no longer met because the government refused to state that China represented a threat to national security at the time of the alleged offenses. This refusal wasn't arbitrary. It stemmed from a high court ruling in a separate case involving 6 Bulgarian citizens who were ultimately jailed for spying for Russia. The court ruled that under the 1911 Official Secrets Act, an enemy includes a country which represents, at the time of the offense, a threat to the national security of the United Kingdom. Without this classification, the prosecution could not proceed under the century-old legislation. The political implications were immediate and explosive. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch seized on the collapse, accusing Starmer's government of being too weak to stand up to Beijing on a crucial matter of national security. She went further, claiming in her Conservative Party conference speech that Labour had deliberately collapsed the trial to suck up to Beijing. The accusations of a cover-up began to mount, with Badenoch repeatedly questioning how the government failed to produce the evidence needed for the Crown Prosecution Service. The government's response initially made matters worse. Officials claimed that the Crown Prosecution Service had objected to publishing the crucial witness statements, something the CPS then denied. This contradiction fueled further speculation about what the government was trying to hide and why they seemed so reluctant to release evidence that could clear their name. Starmer found himself in an impossible position. As a former director of public prosecutions himself, he understood better than most the legal complexities involved. But his expertise also meant that his handling of the situation came under even more intense scrutiny. Critics questioned what was the point of having a lawyer rather than a leader as prime minister if he couldn't even get the law right on a matter of national security. The pressure reached fever pitch during Prime Minister's questions, where Badenoch used all 6 of her questions to probe Starmer on the issue. She accused him of obfuscation and claimed his account was unraveling with every passing hour. The exchanges were tetchy and personal, with Starmer eventually responding that Badenoch was clearly not a lawyer or a leader, delivered with what observers described as just a hint of an intellectually superior sneer. But the damage was mounting. The Speaker of the House, Lindsay Hoyle, reacted with fury at the trial's collapse, saying he felt Parliament hadn't received the protection it deserved. "I'm angry and disappointed," he declared. "My job is to protect Parliament. I feel we aren't getting that protection." When the Speaker of the House expresses such concerns, it signals that the issue has moved beyond normal political point scoring into questions of fundamental institutional integrity and democratic protection.
I'm deeply disappointed by the outcome. We wanted to see prosecutions. Mr. Speaker, I know just how seriously, rightly, that you take these matters. National security will always be the first priority of this government, and we will always defend against espionage. In recent weeks, there have been baseless accusations put about by the party opposite. Let me set out the facts. The relevant period was when these offences took place. That was under the Conservative government between the years of 2021 and 2023. This period was bookended by the integrated review of 2021, the beginning of the period, and the refresh of that review in 2023, setting out their policy. These statements of government policy were very carefully worded to not describe China as an enemy. Instead.
Sorry, Mr. Stewart. Somebody who is on the Speaker's panel, I've told once before, should know better. Do not question my judgment. I thought it was important that the Prime Minister tells this House first rather than somewhere else. So please, this is very important to me and very important to the House. I take it seriously, so I don't need any more side comments. Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The review of 21 and the refresh of 23 were very carefully worded to not describe China as an enemy. Instead, they stated increased national security protections where China poses a threat, and that the then government would engage with China to leave room open for constructive and predictable relations. The Deputy National Security Advisor, Matt Collins, set out the then government's position in a substantive witness statement in 2023, which was subsequently supplemented by 2 further short statements. The Cabinet Secretary assures me that the DSNA faithfully set out the policy of the then Tory government. I know firsthand that the DSNA is a civil servant of the utmost integrity, and those opposite who worked with him, I'm sure, would agree with that assessment. Under this government, no minister or special advisor played any role in the provision of evidence. I can't say what the position was of the previous government in relation to the involvement of ministers or special advisors. If the Leader of the Opposition knows the answer to that question, and I suspect that she does, I invite her to update the House. Last night, the Crown Prosecution Service clarified that, in their view, the decision whether to publish the witness statements of the DSNA is for the government. I have therefore carefully considered this question this morning, and after legal advice, I have decided to publish the witness statements. Given the information contained, we will conduct a short process, but I want to make clear I intend to publish the witness statements in full.
The government's attempts to shift blame to the previous Conservative administration also face scrutiny. While it's true that the alleged offenses occurred under Conservative rule, and that the Conservative government's integrated review of 2021 and its 2023 refresh were very carefully worded to not describe China as an enemy, critics argued that the current government had months to address the evidential problems before allowing the case to collapse entirely. Faced with this mounting pressure and accusations of a cover-up, Starmer finally capitulated. In a statement to the Commons that was clearly designed to draw the political sting from the situation, he announced that he would publish the 3 witness statements prepared by Deputy National Security Advisor Matt Collins. "I intend to publish the witness statements in full," he told MPs, though he warned there would be a short process before publication due to the sensitive information contained within them. The decision to publish represents a significant moment in this saga. These are the very statements that the Crown Prosecution Service deemed insufficient to proceed with the trial. They are the documents that allegedly failed to show China posed a threat to national security at the time of the alleged offenses. Their publication will either vindicate the government's position or raise even more uncomfortable questions about why the case was allowed to collapse. What we know from the statements already published reveals the complexity of the situation. Collins described China as the biggest state-based threat to the UK's economic security, and detailed what he called the active espionage threat that China posed to the UK. Yet the same document emphasized that the UK government remained committed to pursuing a positive relationship with China. This nuanced position, acknowledging China as a threat while seeking to maintain diplomatic relations, appears to have been insufficient for the legal threshold required under the Official Secrets Act. The timing of this controversy is particularly sensitive, for Starmer's government. Britain has been trying cautiously to reset ties with Beijing after years of frosty relations over spying allegations, human rights concerns, China's support for Russia in the Ukraine war, and the crackdown on civil liberties in Hong Kong. Britain's top diplomat and Treasury chief have both visited Beijing in the past year, and Starmer himself is expected to travel to China next year. The collapse of this spy trial threatens to derail these diplomatic efforts and raises questions about whether the government prioritized diplomatic relations over national security prosecutions. The broader implications extend far beyond this single case. The revelation that the century-old Official Secrets Act may be inadequate for prosecuting modern espionage cases highlights the need for legislative reform. Critics have pointed out that there is nothing in the Official Secrets Act that recognizes the concept of a declared enemy, leaving prosecutors dependent on judicial interpretations that may not align with the realities of contemporary international relations. Legal experts have noted the peculiarity of the situation. Professor Mark Elliott of the University of Cambridge explained that there is no official status where countries are designated as enemies or not. The prosecution has to prove to a jury that defendants were trying to pass information to an enemy, and the court can form its own view. This legal ambiguity creates a gap between political reality and legal requirements that may have contributed to the case's collapse. For Cash and Barry, the collapse of their trial brings relief but also lasting damage. Cash stated outside the Old Bailey that he was relieved that justice has been served, but both men have had their reputations permanently affected by the serious allegations against them. Cash has since released a detailed statement defending his actions, claiming that the information he shared with Barry was either publicly available or just political gossip that formed part of the everyday Westminster rumor mill. He insisted that he believed Barry to be as critical and concerned about the Chinese Communist Party as he was, making it inconceivable that Barry would deliberately pass information to Chinese intelligence. The case has also highlighted the vulnerability of Britain's democratic institutions to foreign interference. The allegations suggest that Chinese intelligence was able to penetrate not just government circles, but the very heart of parliamentary democracy through Cash's connections to senior members of parliament and his role in the China Research Group. Whether or not the specific allegations against Cash and Barry are true, the case demonstrates the sophisticated methods that foreign intelligence services may use to gather information about British political processes. The political fallout from his affair is likely to continue for months. Opposition parties will undoubtedly use the published witness statements to launch further attacks on the government's handling of the case and its broader China policy. The statements may reveal uncomfortable details about the government's internal deliberations and the extent to which diplomatic considerations influence the provision of evidence to prosecutors. Starmer's decision to publish the statements represents a calculated gamble. By releasing the documents, he hopes to demonstrate transparency and put to rest accusations of a cover-up. But the publication also risks revealing information that could be embarrassing or politically damaging. The government's insistence that there was no political interference in the case will be tested against whatever the statements reveal about the decision-making process. The saga also raises broader questions about Britain's approach to China and the balance between diplomatic engagement and national security concerns. The government's apparent reluctance to classify China as a direct threat, even in the context of a serious espionage case, suggests a complex calculus that weighs economic and diplomatic interests against security considerations. This balancing act is likely to become even more challenging as Britain navigates an increasingly complex international environment. As we await the full publication of the witness statements, one thing is clear. This controversy has exposed significant weaknesses in Britain's legal and institutional frameworks for dealing with modern espionage, threats. The collapse of the China spy trial may ultimately prove to be a watershed moment that forces a fundamental reassessment of how Britain protects its national security interests while maintaining necessary diplomatic relationships with strategic competitors. The story of Starmer's forced disclosure of the China spy evidence is far from over. The publication of the witness statements will likely generate new questions and controversies, and the broader issues of legislative reform and institutional vulnerability will require sustained attention. What began as a straightforward espionage case has evolved into a complex political crisis that goes to the heart of how modern democracies defend themselves against foreign interference while maintaining the diplomatic flexibility necessary for international engagement. The resolution of this crisis will have implications that extend far beyond the fate of two individuals or even one government, potentially reshaping Britain's approach to national security in an era of great power competition.